only focusing on the CO2 aspects, we provide the information so that decision makers in the various countries can use that to make up their mind whether they want to use this option or not. And that applies across the board. So we're not recommending.
Next question. Sir?
Claudio Angelo from Folha de São Paulo newspaper in Brazil. Given the time frame needed for the UNFCCC process to work out, do you think that it's achievable to make emissions peak in 2015 in the 450 scenario?
Well, we give no judgment on whether the political process can do this. We lay out that a lot will depend on how international agreements are structured. We analyze the literature on effectiveness of international agreements, not just on climate change but on other issues, and there are lessons to be drawn on how to deal with that, to design them in such a way that the costs are the lowest, to design them in such a way that there is incentives for countries to participate. And these things will determine whether such a task will be doable. But it's not our task to identify what the political community should do or whether they are able to do it. That's not our task.
Next question here, please.
Pinapa Hong Thong, the Nation newspaper here in Bangkok. As you said that the major source of carbon dioxide is the use of fossil fuel. So why not you recommend the whole world to gradually fade away from the fossil use? Thanks.
Oh, so sorry. Yeah, thank you. What the report say and is saying is that carbon dioxide emissions from fossil fuels contribute significantly and by far the largest one. Now, the report, as my colleagues mentioned, we cannot recommend. What the report is saying is we say that there are vast variety of energy sources, and each of those sources, there are likely emissions when you combust them, what you will get. Each of those sources, when you use them to provide energy services, we provide also the efficiency at which we can provide those services, and it is left with countries to choose. Let me therefore stress one important aspect of energy supply. Energy supply, the decision to select an energy source is based on several factors. GHG emission is just one of such factors. There are a lot of other national circumstances like national endowments, like trade practices, financial availability, and countries in their decision to choose what energy source they want to do, they have to take a lot of these factors into consideration. However, there is enough evidence and there is enough information in the report to help countries when they try to get new energy supply systems, when they try to upgrade their energy systems, and when they try to retire their energy systems. You can have information in the report to help you to choose, and then you can shift from one path to less fossil fuel path.
Let me add one brief remark. If you really want to capture the potential for reducing emissions that we have identified, then indeed shifts away from fossil fuels will have to be made. That does not mean that the world energy system will be independent from fossil fuels. It's now very high, the share of, and it will remain there for a long time. But any new investment can shift to something else.
Next question, sir.
Mike Casey with Associated Press. What should the countries who haven't signed the Kyoto Protocol take away from this report?
Well, it's not a matter of signing or not signing Kyoto Protocol. Any country can take this information and take action. So, I mean, the Kyoto Protocol is a framework in which countries get maybe more incentives to do it, but it's not a matter of having to join Kyoto first before you can do anything.
Let me also add to that, countries, whether they sign a particular agreement or not, have a civil society, have the corporate sector, have local self-government, and in several countries where such agreements are not signed, and you can take it in the case of the Kyoto Protocol, there are some very interesting initiatives which are taking place among these stakeholders. And I believe that in the ultimate analysis, if you are dealing with a democratic form of government, it's really a matter of time before actions are taken in conjunction with initiatives at the grassroots level or at the level of the corporate sector, at the level of governments of the countries themselves. So, I think I go back to what I said earlier. The messages contained in this report, the analysis and assessment contained in this report, I think would, and I hope it does, have a major impact on thinking on the part of people at every level of society, whether inside the government or outside, all of which I think will add up to some optimism about action being taken in the future.
We'll take a question on this side.
Marco Magrini, Il Sole 24 Ore and Italian Daily. Professor Pachauri, you just told us that you are optimist concerning the upcoming Bali meeting, and I hope you are right. Still, since you have spoken to delegates from many countries during these days, do you think they are more willing to, let's say, sacrifice 3% of world GDP, or rather 0.2% that equates to, let's say, disaster?
Well, let me say that I am an optimist, otherwise I wouldn't have been up till 5 o'clock in the morning, held a breakfast meeting at 7 o'clock, for which I was a bit late incidentally, and yet be here feeling good about the fact that all of you, ladies and gentlemen, are taking so much interest in this issue. But, I really think it's a question of finding paths which take full advantage of the core benefits from mitigation strategies, adopting paths that would avoid, delay, or minimize damage from inaction. I think you can't lose sight of that reality. And I think you also have to look at means by which you can develop options that perhaps don't exist today, but will be available tomorrow if countries, societies, companies are willing to take that action. So, it's really not for me to say whether a country will give up 3% of its GDP or adopt some other option. I think in a democratic society in particular, these things are taken on the balance of consideration of various aspects of the problem. And I don't think you can ignore what the world is getting to understand as the implications of inaction. And I think all of this will add up to some action, I hope. And that's why I remain optimistic.
We'll take another question on this side. Adam?
Lori Gehring from the Chicago Tribune. I'm curious, in this report, you've said that there are so many options for people to choose from. You run through a lot of different things and suggested that each country and each region will have to pick its own options that will work best there. But when you look at this in an overall way, what do you see as the things that have surprised you, things that have come out as the easiest, quickest way to make a difference, and the thing that is the most important of these, even if it's not the easiest and quickest? I mean, it would seem that the power industry and coal is is one of the big issues. But could you answer those two things for me?
Well,